Marcus stared at the email on his phone screen. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the device. The words blurred through his tears, but he'd already read them 5 times. "Thank you for your kindness that cold night 3 months ago. I've been looking for you ever since. Please come to my office tomorrow at 2 p.m. There's something important I need to discuss with you. Sarah Chen, CEO of Chen Industries." 3 months ago, Marcus had been living in his broken-down car. He'd given his only warm jacket to a shivering woman outside a 24-hour diner. He thought he'd never see her again. He was wrong. Now, standing outside the tallest building in the city, Marcus felt his stomach twist into knots. The glass tower stretched up so high he couldn't see the top. Golden letters spelled out Chen Industries across the front. People in expensive suits walked in and out like they owned the world. Marcus looked down at his worn sneakers and faded jeans. What was he doing here? But he had to know. He had to find out why the woman from that night wanted to see him. 3 months earlier, the rain hammered against Marcus's car windows like angry fists. Each drop felt like it was mocking him. His stomach growled so loud it echoed in the tiny space. He'd eaten his last slice of bread 2 days ago. "Just one more night," he whispered to himself. "Tomorrow I'll figure something out." But deep down, Marcus knew tomorrow wouldn't be any different. He'd lost his job at the factory 6 months ago. His landlord had kicked him out 3 months later. His savings were gone. His friends had stopped returning his calls. At 24 years old, Marcus felt like his life was over before it had really begun. The car's engine had died completely last week. Now, it was just a metal shell that barely kept the rain out. The heater hadn't worked in months. Marcus wrapped his thin jacket tighter around his shoulders, but it didn't help much. His phone buzzed. The battery was almost dead, but he could see a text from his sister. "Mom's asking about you again. I told her you're doing great at your new job. Please don't make me a liar, Marcus." Marcus closed his eyes. His family thought he was living his dream in the big city. They had no idea he was sleeping in a broken car behind a gas station. The rain got heavier. Water started dripping through a crack in the roof, landing right on Marcus's head. He scooted over, but now he was pressed against the cold window. "This can't be my life," he said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the empty car. "This can't be how my story ends." But what choice did he have? Marcus had applied to over 200 jobs in the past 3 months. Fast food restaurants, grocery stores, gas stations, and cleaning companies. Nothing. Every rejection felt like a punch to the gut. "We'll call you if anything opens up," they always said, but they never called. The worst part wasn't the hunger or the cold. It was the shame. The feeling that somehow he'd failed at being human. Around midnight, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He needed to move. He needed to feel like he existed. He stepped out into the rain. It soaked through his jacket in seconds. The cold hit him like a slap, but at least it made him feel something other than empty. Marcus walked down the street with no destination in mind. His wet shoes squeaked with every step. The city looked different at night, lonelier. Even the streetlights seemed dim and tired. He passed fancy restaurants where people laughed and ate warm food. Through the windows, he could see families sharing meals, couples holding hands, friends celebrating something. Marcus pressed his face against the glass for just a moment, watching their warm, bright world. A security guard noticed him and started walking over. Marcus quickly moved on. He walked for what felt like hours. His legs ached, and his clothes clung to his skin like wet cement. But he kept going because stopping meant going back to that cold car, going back to feeling invisible. That's when he saw the diner. It was a small, beat-up place called Eddie's All Night. The neon sign flickered like it might die any second, but there was something about it that felt safe. Maybe it was the warm yellow light spilling out onto the wet sidewalk, or maybe it was just the fact that it was open. Marcus stood outside for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go in. He only had $3.47 to his name, not enough for a real meal, but maybe enough for a cup of coffee. Something warm. Just as he reached for the door handle, he heard a sound that made his heart stop. Someone was crying. Marcus looked around and saw her huddled next to the diner's back wall. A woman, probably in her 30s, is sitting on the ground with her knees pulled up to her chest. She was soaking wet, just like him. But what made Marcus's chest tight was how she was shaking. She was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering. Her thin dress was completely soaked through. She had no jacket, no sweater, nothing to protect her from the cold. Marcus stood there frozen. He'd never seen someone look so small and helpless. Even in his worst moments, even sleeping in his car, he'd never looked that broken. The smart thing would be to keep walking. He had his own problems, his own pain, his own cold to deal with. But something about her reminded him of his little sister when they were kids. The way she used to curl up when she was scared. The way she'd look at him like he could fix anything. Before he could stop himself, Marcus was walking toward her. "Hey," he said softly, trying not to scare her. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up at him with the most tired eyes Marcus had ever seen. They were red from crying, but there was something else in them. Something that looked like giving up. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know I shouldn't be here. I'll leave." No, Marcus said quickly. "You don't have to leave. You looked cold." That's when he noticed she wasn't just shivering from the rain. She was shaking the way people shake when they're about to collapse. Her lips were turning blue. Marcus looked down at his own jacket. It wasn't much. Thin, torn in a few places, and soaked through. But it was something. It was all he had to offer. And without thinking, without weighing the pros and cons, without worrying about what would happen to him, Marcus took off his jacket. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "You need this more than I do." The woman stared at the jacket like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "I can't take that," she said. "You'll freeze." Marcus was already freezing. The rain felt like ice needles on his skin. But looking at her, he knew she needed it more. "I'll be fine," he lied. "Please, take it." The woman's eyes filled with fresh tears. But this time, they didn't look like tears of despair. They looked like something else. Something Marcus couldn't quite name. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Marcus knelt next to her so they were at eye level. Up close, he could see she'd been through something terrible. There were scratches on her arms. Her expensive-looking dress was torn. Whatever had happened to her tonight, it had been bad. "Because," Marcus said simply, "sometimes we all need someone to be kind to us." The woman took the jacket with shaking hands. The moment she put it on, Marcus felt the full force of the cold hit him. It was like being punched by winter itself. But seeing the relief in her eyes made it worth it. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea what this means to me." They sat there in silence for a while. Two strangers, both broken in different ways, share a moment of unexpected kindness in the rain. "I'm Sarah," she finally said. "Marcus. Marcus," she repeated, like she was memorizing it. "That's a strong name." "It doesn't feel very strong right now," Marcus admitted. Sarah looked at him carefully, like she was seeing him for the first time. "You're homeless, aren't you?" she asked gently. Marcus felt his face burn with shame. He wanted to lie, to pretend he was just out for a late walk, but something about Sarah made him want to tell the truth. "Yeah," he said quietly. "For a few months now, and you just gave me your only jacket." Marcus shrugged. "You needed it more." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, stronger. "I was going to kill myself tonight," she said. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He turned to stare at her, not sure he'd heard right. "I had it all planned out," Sarah continued. "I was going to walk to the bridge after the rain stopped, end it all. But then you," she touched the jacket, "you reminded me that there's still good in this world." Marcus felt tears mixing with the rain on his face. He'd thought he was just giving away a jacket, but somehow, without knowing it, he'd saved a life. "Sarah," he said carefully, "whatever happened tonight, whatever brought you here, it doesn't have to end this way." "You don't understand," she said. "I've lost everything. My company, my family, my reputation. I have nothing left." "You have your life," Marcus said, "and as long as you're breathing, you can build something new." Sarah laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Easy for you to say." "No," Marcus said firmly. "It's not easy for me to say. I'm living in my car. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I can't get a job anywhere. Every morning I wake up, wondering if today's the day I give up too." Sarah looked at him with surprise. "Then why don't you?" she asked. Marcus thought about it. Why didn't he give up? What kept him going when everything seemed hopeless? "Because," he said slowly, "I keep thinking that maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe tomorrow someone will give me a chance. Maybe tomorrow I'll meet someone who changes everything." As he said the words, Marcus realized he was talking to himself as much as to Sarah. "And maybe," he continued, "the worst night of my life will lead to the best day of my life. I don't know when that day will come, but I want to be here when it does." Sarah was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if she'd heard him. Then she stood up slowly, still wearing his jacket. "I should go," she said. Panic shot through Marcus's chest. What if she was still planning to hurt herself? "Where?" he asked. "Home," Sarah said, "to figure out how to start over." She looked down at him with an expression Marcus couldn't read. "Keep the jacket," Marcus said quickly. "I want you to have it. I can't. Please, think of it as a reminder that someone believes you can start over." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. She reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. "Take this," she said. "I can't take your money," Marcus protested. "You gave me something much more valuable than money," Sarah said. "You gave me hope." Before Marcus could argue, she pressed the bill into his hand. "I'm going to find you," she said suddenly. "When I get back on my feet, I'm going to find you and pay you back properly." Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Just promise me you'll be okay." "I promise," Sarah said. And for the first time all night, she actually smiled. She started walking away, then turned back. "Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for saving my life." And then she was gone, disappearing into the rain and the night, taking his jacket with her. Marcus sat there for a while longer, getting soaked to the bone. But something had changed inside him. The $20 in his hand meant he could buy a real meal. But more than that, he'd helped someone. He'd made a difference. For the first time in months, Marcus felt like he mattered. He had no idea that the woman he'd helped, Sarah Chen, was the founder and CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city. He had no idea that she'd lost everything in a hostile takeover earlier that day. He had no idea that she'd been planning to end her life rather than face the shame of failure. And he had no idea that his simple act of kindness had just set in motion a series of events that would change his life forever. Marcus stood up and walked toward the diner. The $20 in his pocket felt like a fortune. For the first time in months, he was going to have a warm meal. But more importantly, for the first time in months, Marcus felt hope. As he pushed open the diner door, he had no idea that in exactly 3 months and 2 days, he would receive an email that would turn his world upside down. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped inside. The warmth hit his face like a hug. The smell of coffee and bacon made his stomach roar with hunger. "Rough night?" the waitress asked, looking at his soaked clothes. "Actually," Marcus said, surprising himself with his answer, "I think it might have been one of the best nights of my life." The waitress looked at him like he was crazy, and maybe he was. Maybe only a crazy person would give away his only jacket to a stranger on the coldest night of the year. But as Marcus slid into a warm booth and ordered his first real meal in days, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. Something that would matter more than he could imagine. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside the diner, wrapped in warmth and the smell of food, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He had no idea that miles away, in a luxury hotel room, Sarah Chen was sitting on her bed, still wearing his jacket, making phone calls to lawyers and investors. He had no idea that she was already planning her comeback. And he definitely had no idea that she was going to spend the next 3 months tracking him down. All Marcus knew was that he'd helped someone tonight. And somehow, that made all the difference. The waitress brought him a steaming cup of coffee. As Marcus wrapped his cold hands around the warm mug, he thought about Sarah. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she'd keep her promise to be okay. He never imagined that she would keep her other promise, too. The promise to find him. Marcus stepped into the marble lobby of Chen Industries and immediately felt like he was in the wrong place. Everything was shiny and expensive. The ceiling was so high it made him dizzy. People in suits that probably cost more than his car walked past him like he was invisible. The security guard looked at Marcus like he was a bug that had crawled in from outside. "Can I help you?" The guard asked in a tone that really meant, "You don't belong here." Marcus's mouth felt dry as sand. I have an appointment with Sarah Chen." The guard raised one eyebrow. "You have an appointment with the CEO?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed the email. The guard studied it like it might be fake, then made a phone call. After a few minutes of whispering, he handed Marcus a visitor badge. 47th floor, the guard said, pointing toward the elevators. "Don't touch anything." The elevator ride felt like it took forever. Marcus watched the numbers climb higher and higher. 10, 20, 30, 40. Each floor made his stomach feel more twisted up. When the doors finally opened on the 47th floor, Marcus stepped out into a world he'd never seen before. The walls were covered in expensive art. The carpet was so thick his feet sank into it. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out below like a map. A woman in a perfect suit walked toward him. She had the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Williams?" she said. "I'm Jennifer, Miss Chen's assistant. She's waiting for you in her office." Marcus followed Jennifer down a long hallway. His reflection in the polished floor looked small and out of place. He wished he'd worn something nicer than his cleanest pair of jeans and a shirt he'd bought at a thrift store. Jennifer stopped in front of two huge wooden doors. She knocked once and waited. "Come in," said a voice from inside. Jennifer opened the doors, and Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The office was bigger than most apartments. One entire wall was nothing but windows, showing the city stretching out to the horizon. A massive desk sat in the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than Marcus had ever made in a year. And behind the desk, wearing a sharp black business suit, sat Sarah. But she looked nothing like the broken woman he'd met in the rain 3 months ago. Her hair was pulled back perfectly. Her makeup was flawless. She looked powerful, confident, like she could buy and sell entire companies before lunch, which, Marcus realized, she probably could. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Marcus felt like he was looking at two different people, the shivering woman from that rainy night, and this powerful CEO sitting in front of him. "Hello, Marcus," Sarah said softly. "Hi," Marcus managed to croak out. Sarah stood up and walked around her desk. Up close, Marcus could see that her eyes were the same, kind but tired, like she'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Please, sit," she said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. Marcus sat down carefully, afraid he might break something expensive. The chair was so comfortable it felt like sitting on a cloud. "I bet you're wondering why I asked you here," Sarah said. "Yeah," Marcus admitted. Yes, ma'am, I am." Sarah smiled, a real smile this time, not the fake business kind. "You don't have to call me ma'am," she said. "After what you did for me, I think we're past formalities." Marcus had 1,000 questions, but he didn't know where to start. How had she found him? How had she gone from sitting in the rain to running a company? And why did she want to see him? "I kept your jacket," Sarah said suddenly. "What?" Sarah walked over to a closet in the corner of her office. She opened it and pulled out Marcus's old jacket, the same torn, faded jacket he'd given her that night. But now it was clean and carefully folded. "I've had it dry cleaned," she said, "but I wanted to keep it exactly as it was. It reminds me of something important." "What's that?" "That kindness exists in the darkest places," Sarah said, "and that sometimes the people with the least to give are the most generous." Marcus felt his cheeks burn. He didn't feel generous. He felt confused and out of place. "Sarah," he said carefully, "I don't understand what's happening here. 3 months ago, you seemed like you were in trouble, and now you're running this huge company. How is that possible?" Sarah's smile faded a little. She walked back to her desk and sat down. "It's a long story," she said. "I've got time," Marcus said. Sarah was quiet for a moment, like she was deciding how much to tell him. 3 months ago," she began, I lost everything. This company, Chen Industries, I built it from nothing over 10 years. Started in my garage when I was 22. Just me and a computer and an idea for better software. Marcus nodded, trying to follow along. By last year, we had over 5,000 employees and were worth $2 billion, Sarah continued. But I made some mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. My business partner and my board of directors worked together to push me out. They said I was too young, too reckless, too emotional to run the company I'd created. That's terrible, Marcus said. The night you met me, Sarah said, was the night I lost my company. They'd voted me out earlier that day, frozen all my accounts, kicked me out of my own building. I went from being worth millions to having nothing in about 6 hours. Marcus remembered how broken she'd looked that night. Now it made sense. I was so ashamed, Sarah continued. I felt like such a failure. Everyone in the business world was laughing at me. The newspapers called me the fallen princess of tech. I couldn't face going home to my family and admitting I'd lost everything they were proud of me for building. So you were going to... Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. Kill myself, Sarah said simply. Yes. I was going to walk to the river and just end it. I couldn't see any other way out. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. He'd known she was in pain that night, but he hadn't realized how bad it was. But then you gave me your jacket, Sarah said, and you talked to me about not giving up, about how the worst night might lead to the best day. Do you remember saying that? Yeah, Marcus whispered. Those words saved my life, Sarah said. Literally. I went back to my hotel room that night and started making phone calls instead of walking to the river. I called lawyers, investors, old friends. I spent 3 weeks putting together a plan to fight back. And it worked? Sarah grinned, the first real, happy expression Marcus had seen from her. It worked better than I ever imagined. It turned out my business partner had been stealing money from the company for years. When I threatened to expose him, the board had to choose between him and me. They chose me. So you got your company back? I got my company back, Sarah confirmed. Plus, the scandal made us front-page news for weeks. Our stock price actually went up because people respected the fact that I fought back instead of giving up. We're now worth more than we ever were before. Marcus felt amazed and happy for her, but also more confused than ever. That's incredible, he said. But I still don't understand why you wanted to see me. Sarah leaned forward in her chair, and suddenly she looked serious. Marcus, she said, you saved my life that night, not just by giving me your jacket, but by reminding me that good people still exist in this world. You showed me kindness when I had nothing to offer in return. I didn't do anything special, Marcus protested. You gave a stranger your only protection from the cold, Sarah said. When you were homeless and had nothing yourself, do you have any idea how rare that kind of selflessness is? Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. He still didn't feel like he'd done anything that special. I've been looking for you for 3 months, Sarah continued. It wasn't easy. I only knew your first name and what you looked like. I hired private investigators. I had them check every homeless shelter, every soup kitchen, every place someone in your situation might go. You hired investigators to find me? Marcus asked in shock. I had to find you, Sarah said, because I made you a promise that night, and I never break my promises. Marcus remembered. She'd said she would find him and pay him back properly when she got back on her feet. You don't owe me anything, Marcus said, the same words he'd said that night. Yes, I do, Sarah said firmly. I owe you everything. She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a thick folder. I found out a lot about you during my search, she said. Marcus Williams, 24 years old. Lost your job at Morrison Manufacturing when they downsized. Couldn't find new work because of the economy. Lost your apartment, then your car broke down. You've been living in shelters and on the street for the past 6 months. Marcus felt embarrassed having his whole sad story laid out like that. But I also found out other things, Sarah continued. You graduated top of your class from community college with a degree in business management. Your professor said you were one of the smartest students they'd ever had. Your old boss at Morrison said letting you go was the biggest mistake the company ever made, but they had to cut costs somewhere. How did you find all that out? Marcus asked. When you have resources, you can find out anything, Sarah said. The question is, what do you do with the information? She slid the folder across the desk toward him. Open it, she said. Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a single piece of paper with the Chen Industries logo at the top. It looked official and important. Marcus started reading, but the fancy business language was hard to understand. What is this? He asked. It's a job offer, Sarah said simply. Marcus's heart stopped. A job offer? Vice President of Operations, Sarah said. Starting salary of $120,000 a year, plus benefits, plus stock options. Marcus stared at the paper like it were written in a foreign language. $120,000? He'd never made more than $30,000 in his entire life. You're joking, he said. I never joke about business, Sarah said. Marcus, you have the education, the intelligence, and most importantly, the character to succeed in this role. You just need someone to give you a chance. But I've been homeless, Marcus protested. I haven't worked in 6 months. I don't have experience running anything important. You have something more valuable than experience, Sarah said. You have integrity, you have compassion, and you have the kind of judgment that led you to help a stranger on the worst night of both our lives. Marcus felt like the room was spinning. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. Sarah, he said slowly, this is too much. I can't accept this. Why not? Because I didn't help you to get something back, Marcus said. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Taking a job from you would make it feel like I was buying and selling kindness. Sarah smiled, and Marcus could see tears forming in her eyes. And that, she said, is exactly why you're the right person for this job. She stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. Marcus, she said, I run a company with 5,000 employees. I make decisions every day that affect thousands of families. Do you know what the most important quality is for someone in that position? Intelligence? Marcus guessed. Character, Sarah said. The ability to do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something, even when nobody's watching. She turned back to face him. I've worked with Harvard MBAs who would steal from their own grandmothers if it meant making a profit. I've seen people with decades of experience make terrible decisions because they only cared about themselves. But you gave away your jacket in the rain to help a stranger. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Marcus felt overwhelmed. Part of him wanted to grab the job offer and run before Sarah changed her mind. But another part of him felt scared. What if he failed? What if he wasn't good enough? What if he let her down? I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. I do, Sarah said confidently. And I'll be here to help you every step of the way. You won't be thrown in the deep end alone. You'll have training, support, and mentors. Everything you need to succeed. Marcus looked down at the job offer again. Vice President of Operations. A title that sounded impossibly important. A salary that would change his entire life. But more than that, it was a chance. A chance to matter. A chance to build something. A chance to prove that his life had value. There's one condition, Sarah said suddenly. Marcus's heart sank. Here it comes, he thought. The catch that makes this whole thing impossible. What condition? He asked. Sarah walked over to the closet and pulled out his old jacket again. I want you to keep this, she said, holding it out to him. Not just as a reminder of that night, but as a reminder of who you are. The kind of person who gives away his jacket to help a stranger. Promise me that no matter how successful you become, no matter how much money you make or how important your title gets, you'll never forget the person you were that night. Marcus took the jacket with trembling hands. It felt strange holding it again, like touching a piece of his old life. I promise, he whispered. Then do we have a deal? Sarah asked, extending her hand. Marcus stared at her outstretched hand. 3 months ago, they'd been 2 broken people sitting in the rain, sharing a moment of human kindness. Now she was offering him a chance to completely change his life. He thought about all the nights he'd slept in his broken car, all the rejection letters from jobs that didn't even pay half what Sarah was offering, all the times he'd wondered if his life would ever mean anything. And he thought about that rainy night when he'd chosen to help someone else instead of just worrying about himself. Marcus reached out and shook Sarah's hand. "Deal," he said. Sarah's face broke into the biggest smile Marcus had ever seen. "Welcome to Chen Industries, Mr. Williams," she said. "I have a feeling you're going to do amazing things here." As Marcus sat in that beautiful office, holding his old jacket and thinking about his new future, he couldn't help but marvel at how strange life could be. 3 months ago, he'd been living in his car with $3 in his pocket. Now he was shaking hands with a CEO who was offering him a 6-figure job. But the most incredible part wasn't the money, or the title, or the fancy office. The most incredible part was that it had all started with a simple choice to be kind to a stranger in the rain. Marcus had no idea that this was just the beginning. He had no idea about the challenges that would come with his new position. He had no idea about the enemies Sarah had made during her fight to regain her company, enemies who would soon turn their attention to him. And he definitely had no idea that in exactly 2 weeks, everything would go terribly wrong in a way that would test both his character and his friendship with Sarah more than either of them could imagine. But for now, sitting in that office with a job offer in his hands and hope in his heart, Marcus felt like the luckiest person in the world. "When do I start?" he asked. "Tomorrow," Sarah said with a smile. "But first, we need to get you some proper clothes." 2 weeks later, Marcus walked into Chen Industries wearing his first real business suit. It felt strange, like he was wearing someone else's skin. But Sarah had been right. He was learning fast. His new office was on the 35th floor, with its own view of the city. Every morning, Marcus would look out at the streets below and remember what it felt like to walk those same streets with nowhere to go. It kept him humble. Sarah had kept her promise about support and training. She'd paired him with Jennifer, her assistant, who taught him everything from how to read financial reports to how to run meetings. Marcus soaked up every lesson like a sponge. But the best part wasn't the money or the fancy office. It was the feeling that he mattered, that his decisions affected real people's lives in positive ways. Marcus had just finished reviewing the quarterly budget reports when Jennifer burst into his office without knocking. Her face was as white as paper. "Marcus," she said, her voice shaking, "you need to see the news. Right now." She grabbed the remote and turned on the wall-mounted TV. A news reporter's serious face filled the screen. "Breaking news this morning. Chen Industries stock has plummeted 30% after explosive allegations surfaced about the company's new vice president of operations, Marcus Williams." Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. His own face appeared on the screen, a photo that looked like it had been taken with a hidden camera. "According to leaked documents," the reporter continued, "Mr. Williams was allegedly hired not for his qualifications, but because of a personal relationship with CEO Sarah Chen. Sources claim the two had a secret romantic affair and that Williams was given his high-paying position as hush money to keep quiet about the relationship." "That's not true," Marcus said weakly, staring at the screen in horror. But the reporter wasn't finished. "Even more shocking are allegations that Williams falsified his resume and has been embezzling money from company accounts since his hiring 2 weeks ago. If true, this would represent one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in recent history." The screen showed doctored bank statements and fake emails that looked like they came from Marcus's computer. Someone had worked very hard to make him look guilty. Jennifer turned off the TV. The silence in the room felt deafening. "Marcus," she said quietly, "please tell me none of this is true." "Of course it's not true," Marcus exploded. "I would never. I didn't. Jennifer, you know me. You've worked with me every day for 2 weeks. Have I ever done anything dishonest?" Jennifer looked relieved. "I didn't think so. But Marcus, this is bad. Really bad. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters, investors, board members. Everyone wants answers." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "My office, now." Marcus had never seen Sarah look scared before, but when he walked into her office, fear was written all over her face. She was on the phone, speaking in rapid, urgent tones. "I don't care what the newspapers are saying," she snapped into the phone. "Marcus Williams is one of the most honest people I've ever met, and I'll stake my reputation on that." She hung up and looked at Marcus with tired eyes. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked. "Bad," Sarah admitted. "Our stock price is in free fall. 3 major investors are threatening to pull out. The board is calling an emergency meeting for this afternoon." Marcus sank into the chair across from her desk, the same chair where he'd sat 2 weeks ago when Sarah offered him the job of a lifetime. "Sarah," he said, "I swear to you, I didn't do any of those things. I would never steal from this company. I would never betray your trust like that." "I know," Sarah said simply. "You know? Marcus, I've seen your character. I've watched you work for 2 weeks. You're so honest, it's almost annoying. Yesterday, you spent 20 minutes trying to find the owner of a $10 bill you found in the hallway." Despite everything, Marcus smiled a little at that memory. "So if you know I'm innocent," he said, "who's doing this to us?" Sarah's expression darkened. "I have a pretty good idea. Richard Blackstone." Marcus had heard that name whispered around the office. Richard Blackstone was Sarah's former business partner, the one who'd tried to steal the company from her 3 months ago. "But I thought he was in prison," Marcus said. "He was supposed to be," Sarah said grimly. "But rich men with good lawyers don't always get what they deserve. He got out on bail last week pending his appeal." Sarah walked over to her window and stared out at the city. "He swore he'd destroy me for exposing his crimes," she continued. "I guess this is his revenge." "But why target me?" Marcus asked. "Why not go after you directly?" Sarah turned back to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that made his heart sink. "Because he knows that hurting you will hurt me more than anything else he could do." The weight of her words hit Marcus like a truck. Sarah cared about him, really cared about him, and now Blackstone was using that against both of them. "Sarah," Marcus said slowly, "maybe I should resign. If I leave, maybe this will all go away and—" "No." Sarah's voice was sharp and final. "Absolutely not. But if staying here hurts the company—" "Marcus Williams," Sarah said, walking over and standing right in front of him. 3 months ago, you gave me your jacket when I was sitting in the rain, ready to give up on everything. You saved my life. Do you really think I'm going to abandon you the first time things get difficult?" Marcus felt tears burning in his eyes. In his whole life, no one had ever fought for him the way Sarah was fighting for him right now. "What do we do?" he asked. Sarah's expression turned fierce and determined, the same look Marcus had seen in her eyes when she talked about fighting to get her company back. "We fight," she said, "and we win." The emergency board meeting was held in the biggest conference room on the 50th floor. 12 of the most powerful business people in the city sat around a massive table, all of them staring at Marcus like he was a criminal. Sarah sat at the head of the table, looking calm and confident, but Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Harold Morrison, the chairman of the board, "we're here to discuss the serious allegations against Mr. Williams and determine what action this company should take." An older woman named Patricia Wells leaned forward. "Sarah, with all due respect, how well do you really know this man? He was homeless just 2 weeks ago. Now he's been accused of embezzling millions. This looks very bad for the company." "Patricia," Sarah said calmly, "I know Marcus better than I know some people I've worked with for years. These allegations are false, and I can prove it." "How?" asked another board member. Sarah opened her laptop and projected an image onto the big screen at the front of the room. It showed bank records, timestamps, and security camera footage. "The alleged embezzlement transactions all took place between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. on Tuesday," Sarah said. "Here's security footage showing Marcus leaving the building at 6 p.m. Tuesday. And here are his apartment building security logs showing he didn't leave his apartment again until 8 a.m. Wednesday." She clicked to another screen. "Furthermore, the IP address used for these transactions traces back to a computer in Richard Blackstone's office building, the same Richard Blackstone who threatened to destroy this company after we exposed his crimes." Murmurs went around the table. Marcus felt a tiny spark of hope. "That's all circumstantial," Patricia Wells said. "It doesn't prove Mr. Williams is innocent." Then let me offer you something that's not circumstantial, Sarah said. She stood up and walked around the table until she was standing behind Marcus's chair. 3 months ago, she said, I was sitting outside a diner in the rain, ready to end my life. I had lost everything. This company, my reputation, my hope. I was planning to kill myself rather than face the shame of my failures. The room went completely silent. Even Patricia Wells looked shocked. A homeless man found me there, Sarah continued. A man who had nothing, who was living in his car, who hadn't eaten in days. And do you know what he did? Sarah placed her hands on Marcus's shoulders. He gave me his jacket, his only protection from the cold. He didn't know who I was or if I could ever pay him back. He did it because it was the right thing to do. Marcus felt tears rolling down his cheeks, but he didn't care anymore. That man, Sarah said, saved my life.